Okay, here we go. Week 12, Unlock Unit 8. Back to the book. What we will learn in this class: vocabulary relating to the unit topic economics. That is Unit 8 title, Economics or Economics. The skill of skimming when reading. Understanding graphs and being able to interpret them in English. Okay, but first, let's have a quick look at the remaining schedule for this semester. Right, so this is week 12, which runs from May 18 to 22. And in this week, we're just going to study the last unit in the book that we have to study, Unit 8. Week 13, which is next week, May 25 to 29. Next week will be dedicated to completing the final essay and submitting. So everybody has been sending me their drafts, and I am slowly going through those and returning them to you. And then next week I will just put a very short video about how to complete the final essay and when the deadline is for submitting that. Week 14, which is June 1st to the 5th, I will introduce the final test, and we will also have a review of the semester. And then week 15, June 8 to 12, the final test. And the university has decided that we will be doing the final tests at Tsinghua University. I will give you the information about the final test in week 14, but you don't have to worry about anything. It will mostly be writing. Week 16 is officially for makeup classes, but that is not relevant to us because I gave you some assignments to do already for week 1 and 2. So actually, English class will be finished after you take the final test during week 15. Okay, so that is the remaining schedule for our spring 2020 semester. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Unit 8, Economics. So we're just going to go through several of the pages in the book. If you have your book, you can open it as you are watching this video, and you can do some interactive work. So if there is some vocabulary or some reading, stop the video, do the tasks in the book, and then start the video again. Alright, so page 170, we've got some vocabulary here. This is all related to the topic economics. Okay, stock market, a system for buying and selling parts of companies. The total value of all the investments that are traded in this system. That is the stock market. Okay, and what it's a good idea to do if you are studying vocabulary, try to put the word into a sentence. So what I've done is I've just made a sentence with each of these words. Do you pay much attention to the stock market? So that basically means, are you interested in the stock market? Do you spend much time looking at it? A lot of people don't, and yet it seems to be quite important in controlling the finances of the world. Okay, second word. Crash, verb, to fall or lose value suddenly and completely. There was a major financial crash on Wall Street in 1929 and more recently in 2008. So that means there is a significant fall or a loss of value for something. A financial crash. Investor, noun, someone who puts money in a bank, business, etc. in order to make a profit. He's got a great business plan, but needs investors before he can start. So often, people who are starting new businesses require extra money and they look for investors. Depression, noun, a period in which there is very little business activity and little employment. So this is not about your emotional depression, this is about a financial depression. But it's kind of got a similar meaning, not positive. Economic experts are predicting a period of depression following this coronavirus pandemic. Replica, noun, a copy of an object, a replica. If you go to markets such as Dongdaemun, you can find many replica items. Okay, so they are replicas, they are copies of an object, but not the original. Ticker tape, a long, thin strip of paper used in the past for printing, changing information on, for example, the prices of stocks. Ticker tape is not used anymore, but it was once the way to transmit stock prices through telegram lines. So this might not be familiar to you. If you really are that interested, you can have a quick look on Google. But it's basically a system that people used to use for communicating the prices of stocks from one company to another or from one country to another. Okay, page 172, reading 1 and vocabulary 2. Right, so let's start with some more vocabulary. So we got seven words, and then you can have a go at putting them in the correct definition. In the correct example. So number 1, during the recession of 2007 to 2009, people all over the world lost their jobs and were forced to sell their homes. Number 2, at my bank, the interest rate on a loan to buy a car is about 4.5%. Number 3, since Apple Computer Company stocks and shares went on sale in 1976, their value has increased by more than 28,000%. Number 4, real estate, that is land or buildings, is an excellent investment in large cities like Los Angeles or Tokyo. Number 5, my father is a careful investor. He buys assets, like buildings and cars, that increase slowly over time. Number 6, after a natural disaster, such as a tsunami or fire, the homes and businesses in an area usually go down in value. And number 7, if you buy gold, you can probably expect to get a high rate of return on your investment. Right, now let's have a look. So what you can do here, you can stop the video and just try to put the words in the correct definitions, A to G. Okay, so let's go through the answers now. A, the percentage amount that you pay when you borrow money or receive when you lend money for a period of time. The percentage amount that you pay when you borrow money. Okay, so what is that one? Interest rate. So if you borrow some money, you have to pay some extra money. That is called the interest. Or sometimes you can receive interest. B, profit on money you have invested. Profit on money you have invested, that is the return. That is the profit on the money you have invested. You invest $1,000. You sell for $1,500. So the return in that example would be $500. C. Parts of a publicly owned business which can be bought and sold as investments, stocks and shares. D. Someone who puts money in a bank, business, etc. to make a profit. That's the investor. E. How much money something could be sold for. That's the value. F. A period when the economy of a country is not doing well, but not as bad as a depression. Recession. Okay, so a recession is when people are not able to go out and spend money, which has a knock-on effect. Recession. And then when a recession is really bad, it's called a depression. And then G, something such as stocks or property which you buy in order to make a profit, that is your investment. Right, so now you've got your article, and what you can do is you can stop the video, page 173, read the article, translate any words that you don't know or understand. And notice the graphs too. We will return to those later. There is a section in this unit related to reading graphs. Page 174, you can just see a little section that is called skimming. Let's just read this quickly. It's a reading tip. Skimming is the opposite of reading in depth. To skim a text, read it quickly to get a general idea of what it is about. Don't read every word. It is enough to read the title, the introductory paragraph, the concluding paragraph, and perhaps the first sentence of each main body paragraph. It is also useful to look at any photos or diagrams in the text. Skimming is a particularly useful skill in academic reading. Yeah, and it's also very useful in tests. Sometimes you don't need to read every word. You're just trying to get the main ideas. So this skill is called skimming. Okay, we're going to keep going now. Reading 2. We've got some more vocabulary. Number 1. My family has a comfortable standard of living. We have enough money to pay for everything we need, and we are able to save a little bit of money every month. Number 2. People who go to university usually have a higher income than people with only a secondary school education. Number 3. Housing is the biggest expenditure for most people. For instance, many Europeans pay 40% or more of their income in rent or house payments. Number 4. The weather is one factor which influences the price of food. For example, if there is not enough rain, crops are smaller and the price of food goes up. Number 5. Families with children must spend a large percentage of their income on food and clothing. And number 6. It is a good idea for workers to put some money into savings every month. Even putting a little aside each month can result in a large amount over time. Okay, so you've got your 7 words there. Stop the video, have a go at putting them in the correct letter. Okay, A. So A, money that you put away, usually in a bank for a later date. Savings. B, how much money and comfort someone has. Right, this is the standard of living. So this is a good expression. How much money and comfort someone has. Do you have a high standard of living? Do you have a low standard of living? Or would you say you have an average standard of living? C, one of the things that has an effect on a particular situation, decision, event, etc. So that's the factor. There are many factors that go into the economy and the stock market. One of the things that has an effect on a particular situation, a decision, or an event is called a factor. D, the total amount of money that a government or person spends on something, expenditure. The money that you spend is the expenditure. E, money that you earn by working, investing, or producing goods, income. And F, an amount of something expressed as a number out of 100, percentage. Okay, there's one more reading. So the next reading, the second reading in Unit 8, and the title, Falling Income, Rising Expenditure. Falling income, rising expenditure. Okay, so what I thought I'd do with this one is I'm going to read this article and you can read it as I read it. If there are any words or expressions that you don't know after we finish, stop the video and check the translation. Right, here we go at the beginning. So, in almost every country and every culture, parents work hard to try to give their children a richer, more successful, and more comfortable life than they had. For decades following the Second World War, this dream became a reality in many countries around the world. Possibly the best example is the Japanese economic miracle, when Japan, thanks to an extremely high rate of economic growth from the 1960s to the 1980s, developed into one of the world's strongest economies. Yet in Japan, as in other developed nations, many people today are not able to enjoy the same standard of living as their parents before them. This is because in recent years, incomes have declined while expenditure has risen. In effect, this means many people are actually poorer than they were 10 or 20 years ago. Falling incomes are the first cause of a declining standard of living. In the United States, for instance, incomes rose during the 1970s, began falling in the 1980s, and reached their low point during the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. The years since then have seen a slow recovery, yet according to the US Census Bureau, the median income in 2016 was $59,039, nearly the same as in 1999. Similarly, in the United Kingdom, the average household income of £25,700 in 2016 was nearly the same as that in 2007. The other key factor which influences people's standard of living is expenditure. Worldwide, prices for necessities such as rent and food have been rising. As an example, Figure 1 shows the percentage of their income that Americans spent on 5 key categories between 2000 and 2016: housing, food, transport, entertainment, and health. Until 2015, the costs in these 5 categories remained more or less stable. That is, Americans spent approximately 20% of their income on housing, about 10% on food, about 8% on transport, and around 3% each on entertainment and health. As the graph shows, Most of these costs jumped in 2015 and have continued to rise. In the United States and in many countries, the most important cause of rising expenditure over time is the high cost of housing. In many cities worldwide, there is a critical shortage of houses and apartments to buy and rent. This has driven up costs. Also, healthcare costs continue to rise as prescription drugs and hospital costs have become more and more expensive. Transport and food prices have also increased significantly in recent years. In conclusion, the combination of rising prices and falling incomes have left many people with less spending power than they had in previous decades. Because consumers must, and especially housing, because consumers must pay more for essentials like food, healthcare, and especially housing, they have less money for education, investment, savings, and small luxuries like eating in restaurants. For many people, the dream of living in greater comfort and security than their parents must seem very distant indeed. Okay, so have a look at the graph. There are 5 lines relating to the amount of money that Americans spent on those 5 categories. And what we will do in a minute is have a look at reading graphs in English. But what you can do, just to wrap up this article, on page 176, have a go at answering these questions. Let's do number 5 together. Choose the sentence which best summarizes the article. Right, what is the best summary? A. The article compares income and expenditure in the United States with the same factors in other developed countries. It does do that, but is that the main point of the article? Maybe not. B. The article explains how falling incomes and rising expenditure has affected people's standard of living in recent years. That is probably going to be the answer. Let's have a look at the other 2. C. The article describes 5 categories of expenditure which play a key role in determining people's standard of living. Well, paragraph 3 does that, and so does paragraph 4. But what about 1, 2, and 5? Maybe not. The article discusses how the so-called economic miracle became a reality for Japanese people in the years during and following the Second World War. That's only mentioned in the first paragraph. So the best summary would be B. The article explains how falling incomes and rising expenditure has affected people's standard of living in recent years. Okay, and you can have a go at doing part 6 by yourself. And what we will do now is move on to the graphs. Right, so line graphs. Understanding line graphs, it starts on page 180. But this is going to be a summary. So you can watch and listen to the rest of this video, and then you can have a go at studying your book by yourself and doing some of the activities. Right, so we've got this line graph example on page 182. A line graph uses points on a line to show a trend. And on this one, we have 2 lines. The red one, total DVD revenue, and the blue one, total video streaming revenue. Okay, so tip. use the following PowerPoint for strategies on how to read and understand a line graph. Right, so what is this graph about? DVD versus streaming. And they're talking about revenue, so that's the amount of money that these different services make. The amount of money that they make is the revenue. Okay, so the first tip, read the title. It gives the main idea of the line graph. DVD versus streaming. Tip 2, the time period of the graph is on the bottom, the horizontal axis of the graph, the bottom. So this graph's time period is measured in years. You can see that there, 2010 to 2019. And tip 3, the numbers or percentages of the graph are on the left side, the vertical axis, top to bottom. This graph is measured using numbers, and in this case it is dollars. And it is actually in millions of dollars. So we start with 0 and it goes all the way up to $18,000 million. Tip 4, to read a line graph. A number or percentage always goes here, top to bottom, vertical axis. And a point of time always goes here, left to right, horizontal axis. Okay, and tip 5, line graphs can have more than one line. The legend tells the main idea of each line, and each line is a different color. So that is called the legend. That tells you what each line represents. DVD sales in red, streaming sales in blue. Right, so now you have the ability to read the graph, and you could just choose some of the years and compare the two lines. So you can see in 2010, the total DVD revenue was $16,000 million, whereas streaming revenue was only $5,000 million. But in 2019, so just 9 years later, look at the difference. It's completely the opposite. The streaming revenue has gone all the way up to $16,000, and the DVD revenue has fallen to $5,000. Right, so what you can do now, and this is going to be self-study time, page 100 and that should be page 179 to 185, 179 to 185. You can just work through these pages and have a go at answering the questions, just to check that you understand how to read graphs. Okay, so you do not have to send me photos of your work. This is your own self-study time, using your book, checking that you understand this section on graphs, and I will give you a little hint. You might find some of these questions when we do the final test. So have a go at doing those pages in your book by yourself, and I will continue to check your draft essays. There are many of them, so please be patient. And I will return those, and then next week I will just give you a very short video lesson about how to complete the final essay. Okay, that's it for today. See you next time.